What is up, guys? Nams here from Saudi Zombies. So today I'm going to show you how to boost your FPS in 7 Days to Die. We're going to go through a couple of things to do with Windows OS, and then we're going to jump into the game. I'm going to show you how to change some settings around so you can get a better FPS without so much sacrificing the visuals of the game itself. And then I'm going to show you some secret commands that you can do in the F1 console. Now, these commands I thought were common knowledge, but they're not. They're not on any FPS tutorial out there, so I've included them in this video, and they actually help quite a lot. So first things first, the Windows settings. So we're going to go into here and we're going to type in game mode, and we're going to hit enter, go into the game mode settings. A lot of people don't realize that Windows does actually have a game mode which will enhance your computer to run games better. So just click that on like so, and then come over to the right hand side where it says graphic settings. And here you'll have hardware accelerated GPU scheduling. Now you want that on, but when you turn it on, it will ask you to reboot your computer to apply it. So make sure that is on, reboot the computer, and then the next thing I want you to do is come back to your Windows search bar and type in power plan, and click enter. And here you'll have some options in which you can choose between performance and how much electricity your computer is going to use, so to speak. Now I have mine on high performance, but you know, balance is a good one, but you do not want it on power saver. Especially if you've got a gaming laptop, you should check this one, because when you unplug it from the socket, usually it automatically goes into this power saving mode. And then when you plug it back in, it doesn't necessarily automatically go back to say balance or high performance. It will stay in power saving, therefore reducing your gaming laptop performance. Same with the desktop. Just make sure you got it on high performance if you don't mind the increase in the electric bill. And then from there, we are going to go and jump into the game and tweak some of the settings. So I've just loaded up a single player game, and to get my FPS, I simply just press F8, and you can see in the left mid of the screen, there is my FPS right there. I'm setting around the high 20s to 30 level. And if I move forward and back, you can see it actually drops as I move. And this will also happen when there's lots of zombies around and in particular areas. So like outside, some people's FPS drop, and inside, some people's FPS drop. Mine actually is better inside than it is outside. Now my computer isn't the greatest in the world. I haven't got any 3K series graphics card. Mine is a 2080 graphics card, and my CPU is just an i7 7th gen, but I am still having quite a lot of problems with the FPS. So let's see how we can fix this. Let's see how much I can lift this FPS up. So we're going to go here into options. Now the first thing I would suggest you do is go over to dynamic mesh and turn that off. Something new that 7 Days to Die have put in, or the Thumbprint should I say, and it has messed with FPS a lot, especially on online multiplayer servers. So not only do I turn that off, and even though I said no, all of these options mean nothing once it's turned off, I do tend to lower them just for my own peace of mind. I'm just going to go here and make sure everything's as low as possible and click apply. And then from there, I'm going to go over to display. So one of the biggest things that will affect FPS is the resolution here. So you can either lower this down a little bit. 1080p is fine for me and my monitor, but you can lower it and see how that affects your FPS. I'm going to keep it at 1080, but a lot of this is kind of like preference, because some of you want a high FPS and some of you want more visuals and keep the game, you know, pretty, and so you're more immersive in it. If you're playing on PvP, you probably don't really care how pretty it is. You just want to have a good FPS in all situations. And if you're playing PvE, you'll probably be more on the side of keeping the game nice and beautiful. So you do want it in full screen. Window screen or window mode is going to hamper your FPS, so keep full screen on. Dynamic resolution, I would turn this off because I don't like it, because it doesn't seem to come back. So what this is basically, if your FPS drops, per se, on mine the setting says 30, so if my FPS drops below 30, it will lower the resolution here automatically. But I have found that when it goes back up beyond 30, it doesn't tend to automatically bring the resolution up. So I just turn that off to stop that all of a sudden my game turning into Minecraft with this really low resolution. Now coming down to VSync, now what that is, it's vertical sync. So that is a technology that talks between your game and your graphics card, or your monitor should I say, to sync up the frame rates with the refresh rate of your monitor, and this prevents tearing. But what that also does, it kind of bottlenecks your graphics card into how much frames. So if you've got like a really old monitor, or a monitor with low refresh rate, then it's this VSync will lower your FPS. It will stop your graphics card producing more FPS to prevent tearing. So you can turn that off to increase your FPS, but then you might get the occasional tear between your monitor's refresh rate rate and the game's FPS rate. Moving on to brightness, we all know what that is. People just whack that up during the dark times or nighttime so they can see. Little bit of a cheat, but to each his own. Now, field of view obviously can affect your FPS. So if I bring that all the way up and I click apply, but before I do that, if you can see this tree in the right hand corner where I'm moving the mouse button here, if I click apply, that tree was there, and now I can see all these other trees and this whole part of this map. Same on the other side, I can see all this green parts of the roof and the green roof there. Now if I go back to default, if I bring it back the other way, I'm just going to click apply. Now I can't see any of the green roofs on the left or anything of the trees on the right. So what that is your vision, your field of view. Now the more you have it, the more wide you have it, the more the computer has to render in. So that will also affect your FPS. So you can tweak that as you want. If you find it drops your FPS a lot in particular areas, you can bring it down. If you find you're fine with FPS, bring it up. So let me click apply and bring it back to default. Now we're going to go over to the quality. Now these are the important parts, obviously. So I'm going to click on quality, and here we want to tweak a few things without murdering the quality of the different textures. So one of the biggest things that will affect your FPS right off the bat is the anti-alias in here. So I would just turn that off. If you're having real FPS problems, just knock that all the way to off. Texture quality, we know that's going to be like the textures of the building in front of me. So we can just maybe bring that down to half. As you can see, I've got all of this on and ultra and maximum settings. Texture filter, we can just drop that down to high. The UMA texture, we can keep that. You can play with these. So again, you can see your FPS, you can change it. If you see it hugely drops the quality of the game, but you're good FPS and you don't like that, then tweak it, bring it back up. Another thing that will really affect is the reflection quality. So if you think about when you render something into the game, when the game is drawing what you visually see, when it comes to reflection, it's doing it twice. One, for your character's eyes, and two, in the reflection of, say, the water or the mirror or whatever shiny surface there is in 7 Days to Die, that will reflect back what is already generated. So it's rendering in that image twice. So you can actually just turn reflection quality off, and that will also help quite a lot with your FPS. Again, with shadow reflection, let's turn that off. Distancing, we can just turn this down a little bit, bring it all down to high. Particles and LOD distance, which is level of details in the distance. When you play with this, I would drop it down just every 25%, so every quarter. So if I'm going to bring this down a little bit, I'd either want to bring it down to 75 or 50%. Play with it that way. So I'm going down to 50%, just cutting that in half. Now view distance, you'll find that some of these things are grayed out. So view distance and occlusion here are grayed out because I cannot edit them whilst I'm in the game. I'd have to leave the game, go back to the main game menu, then edit them, and then load up the game. But with view distance, in terms of visuals, I'd keep it on high. If you bring it to low, you're only going to render things that are just about in front of you, and it looks really sort of unrealistic. But that does help with FPS. Maybe medium to high is fine, but bringing it to low, you really will end up having a bit of an ugly game. Terrain quality, so that's obviously the terrain. So if you look at grass, not the actual grass that sticks up, the one that you can grab for plant fibers, the sort of grass or the terrain that it's actually on, that type of stuff, or the terrain of the wasteland or the desert, this is what that's talking about. So we can lower that down a little bit. Grass distance, now this is about rendering grass in the distance. Now grass, trees, all that type of foliage is a massive FPS killer for any game. All games, when it comes to grass, trees, things like that, bushes, they murder FPS. So you don't really want to render grass really far away. I mean, it does look obviously a bit more realistic, but it's not a huge visual impact. So I'm just going to turn that to lowest. Object quality, let's bring that down to high. Now all these things in this section here. Hey guys, Future Nams here. I just realized I completely skipped over what occlusion was. So it's this one here, not the ambient occlusion, it's this one. And what that does is draws and renders in things that your character doesn't see, mostly referring to indoor items and textures. Now this isn't so much a strain on your graphics card, but it is a strain on your CPU, on your chip. So if you've got a decent graphics card, but you've got an old CPU, then this might help turning it off, especially if you find 7 Days to Die is kind of bottlenecking your CPU. Anyway, I hope that helps. Back to past nams. Here you could pretty much turn off bloom, depth of field. Now I turn that off, especially for things like PvP, because I find with this game, if I see a guy or I want to shoot a zombie or something like that off in the distance, or say you're out hunting and you found a deer, when I'm using the scope and there's a tree or a bush or a bit of grass in the way, the scope will focus on the tree. It will bring the tree or the grass into focus, and the target, whether it's the deer or another player or a zombie, will be out of focus. And for some reason in 7 Days to Die, it just tends to focus on everything but what I want it to. So I turn off depth of of field off. Motion blur, I don't know why anyone has that on in that game. Let's turn that completely off. That's basically when you look left and right, the whole screen goes blurry for a moment. For me, that doesn't really happen in real life when I look left and right, but you know, every game seems to add it. Ambient occlusion, we can turn that off. Reflection, I guess, yes, we can turn that off. And sun shaft. So the sun shaft is those sunbeams or light beams that come from the sun and reflect through the trees. It does look beautiful, but it also can affect your FPS. So I've turned all of these off. I set most things to high or off. So shall we see what that has done to my FPS? So let me click apply. So I went from balancing onto the 30s all the way up into the 50s. And then when I moved back and forth, it would drop dramatically into the 20s. So now I'm hovering around, I'd say about 50. And if I come back and forth like this, I drop down into say the mid 40s. So I'm not even dropping that much. I went from 30 to 20. Now I'm going from 50 to around the 45-ish to low 40s. So that's a lot better in terms of FPS. And as you can see, game quality or the visuals have not been affected that much. It still looks pretty cool. I like it. Now that's everything on high. Now I could bring things down to a medium and it would be a lot more better FPS with not so much of a visual impact on the game. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. Go to options here, video. Let's bring some shadow distance down to medium, bring some textures down from high to medium like this. Give that a go, apply that. And now I have increased my FPS from being in the low 50s or mid 50s. So that is a straight up 10% better FPS increase right there. So now we're going to go on to the commands that we can use to help with visuals and also FPS. So in certain biomes like the snow, you can see that fog, and even in this wasteland biome, in fact, the wasteland is probably worse for FPS. We can enter in a command that will help with the visuals. And this is also a little bit of a cheeky command that some people don't know, that when you are on a PvP server and you're being shot at, but you can't see the guy because it's foggy everywhere, they've probably entered in this command that the server has yet to disable. I'm going to show you that right now. So we press F1 and we're going to go GFX PP enabled, just like that. Yeah, so I've done 2 X's. I meant to do GFX 1X space PP space enabled. Click enter. Now look at the fog in the background in the wasteland when I click enter. Boom. Difference. So when it comes to things like sniping, obviously I have a much clearer vision and stuff like that. So that is a little bit of a PvP trick, but obviously on our PvP server, we have that disabled, so you can't use a command, but there's a lot of servers out there that haven't. There's other commands you can do, and don't worry if you don't remember these. I have an article with all these FPS and all these tips and tricks below, including the commands. So the next one is PPAF enabled, and then we're going to go again GFX DT enabled. Stands for distance terrain, like that. I'm going to click that, and this should help with your FPS here. So a lot of these things can make dramatic effects for some people or slightly better FPS for others, but this has helped my FPS a lot. I was in the 30s, balancing on the 30s to high 20s, and now I'm moving around between the 40s and 50s, sometimes flicking up into 60s. Just like so. Now there's other things that you should think about too, like your graphics card. Are the drivers up to date? Is your computer hot? Is it clean? When's the last time the fan's been cleaned? Because keeping your computer cool is essential. If your components get too hot, your PC will lower their efficiency, will lower their performance to keep them cooler. So when was the last time you opened up your computer, cleaned the fans, get the dust off it? And when was the last time you updated your graphic drivers? No matter what GPU you have. For me, I have the NVIDIA, so I have the GeForce Experience program put onto my computer, which always lets me know when there's a new update and automatically installs it for me, so I don't even have to think about it. The Radeon graphics card had the exact same program for its graphics cards, so I highly recommend get some of them. And also these, like the GeForce Experience, does optimize the graphics card for particular games, so I highly recommend keeping those two on your list as well. Nice, cool, clean computer, updated graphics drivers. So I hope this video helps you, and if you have any questions, feel free to jump into the Salty Zombies Discord. If you have a really good FPS fix that I have not put in this video, please throw it in the comments below and I will add it to the article. Instead of adding a new video for every new FPS tip, I will generate an article which I will link in the description below, and any new information that's going to help you increase your FPS, I will add it there. Thank you all for watching, and oh look, my FPS was in the 70s there, so that's pretty cool. Thank you all for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I'm still on my way to trying to get in 1,000 subscribers. I'm halfway there, I'm so close. So that mean the world to me if you hit the subscribe button. Also share the video, because you know there's a lot of people playing 7 Days to Die who are having trouble with FPS. So please send this video to them, help them out, let them experience 7 Days to Die the way it's supposed to be. And if you're looking to join a community of avid 7 Days to Die players, then obviously I'm going to recommend our servers. We have servers in Europe, the US, and in Asia, PvE, PvP. We have 2 different PvE ones, casual ones for beginners or people who just don't like the grind so much. You get extra loot, extra XP. Then we have the PvE Pro versions of our server, which is a little bit harder with a lot of added features and mods like boss zombies. So all these different kinds of crazy zombies that you can come across. All that information is in the description below. So until next time, don't be salty.